This is Seattle City Makers, and I'm your host, John Scholes. Well, spring is in the air in the city of Seattle and certainly downtown. Downtown is looking great with our trees in bloom and the cherry blossoms out and just seeing a lot more people on the streets and sidewalks. This past weekend, we had what will be, I think, the largest convention this year in downtown. A bunch of neurologists, 8,000 of them to be specific, at the convention center. And great to see that economic activity pouring into our restaurants and cafes and bars and the drugstores and all those other small businesses that rely on business travelers that want to be in Seattle. And great to have those folks here this past weekend. And our first cruise ship is taking to the shores of downtown. We expect a record cruise season in the city of Seattle this year, nearly 300 boats between April and October. On the shores of Elliott Bay, pouring out tons of cruise passengers into our downtown small businesses and arts and cultural organizations and hotels. So it's great to have conventions and cruise back. It's great to see our economic recovery numbers heading in the right direction. We've got more office workers downtown today than at any time since prior to the pandemic. So we're seeing the return to work and the return to office start to take shape as well. So we're very bullish and encouraged and optimistic about the summer ahead in downtown with the return of conventions and cruise and leisure travel and local visitors and folks showing back up to their offices. So great progress over the last couple of weeks. For episode 7 today of our podcast, I sit down with Michele Smith, who is the Chief Financial Officer at the Woodland Park Zoo, a good friend of mine, a resident of downtown, and someone who's held that role over at the zoo since September of 2017. And in her capacity, she's responsible for providing strategic direction and leadership for all new and ongoing business and earned revenue opportunities at the zoo. So food and beverage and ZooTunes, and the most recent holiday activation that the zoo put on over the last 2 years that drew tens of thousands of folks over to the zoo throughout the holiday season and into the early and mid part of January. We talk about all of that and what it was like to lead this 130 plus year institution through the pandemic and have to worry and care for both your own people and team, but also the animals that the zoo is home to. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Michele Smith, the CFO at the Woodland Park Zoo. So how you been, just generally?
Just good. Really busy getting ready for the summer. So trying to figure out what I'm going to do because, I go over to Orcas a lot. So
get your trips planned.
Get my trips planned.
Yeah.
I saw you did a nice trip to San Francisco.
It was great to
I was jealous.
Oh, it was great to get out and great to see another downtown and some of the progress they're making and good energy on the
they
streets
look
of their
good
city.
in San Francisco, don't they?
It felt really good. And 70 degrees and blue sky helped a lot.
I was jealous.
And
live music. You saw some live music.
I finally got to the Fillmore.
And that looked nice, right?
A spiritual experience.
Spiritual. Why was it so spiritual for you?
Oh, just the history of that place and the artists and everybody who's played there. And they have, not every, but they've got hundreds of the show posters up around the place of who over the years have played there. And a lot of Seattle musicians, right? That
live
have
music
came
is
through.
Back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they, San Francisco just recently California had gotten rid of their mask mandate before I got down there. And so it was, a live show with mostly people that were sort of feeling comfortable with no masks. And
was it a big
felt
crowd?
liberated.
Yeah.
It was packed. It was great.
Awesome.
But, throughout this pandemic, most of us leading organizations have had to worry mostly about people and adjusting for our people and the teams and keeping people safe. You've had to worry, you and your colleagues have had to manage people and animals.
Yeah.
Which is like a whole wrinkle that the rest of us didn't have. What were some of the most challenging aspects of that early on when you all were shut down, right, for a good period of time, and you had to worry about the people and animals?
We did. I think that people forgot that we just couldn't, close our office and lock away and throw away the key, that we had 1,000 endangered species on our property. And so for us, we had to think about the care of the animals too and our employees that were going to be taking care of them. For a lot of people, they don't know that some of our primates and some of our big cats are susceptible to COVID. And so
I didn't know that. You mentioned that to me like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
that animals can get COVID too. And
some of the primates and some of our, again, cats. And so right now we're in the process of giving them a COVID-19 shot. So
really?
That's currently up on deck right now.
And do they have to get the same kind of sequence that we do? Do they get boosted? Is it
From my understanding,
probably bigger doses for these big animals?
I don't know if it's bigger doses, but it's the same sequence that you have to use that same vial. So from my understanding from our animal health, there's 10 shots in one vial. It's a little bit more complicated because as humans, we can all line up for that. But for all of our 1,000 animals, it's taking them off exhibit and then, bringing them in to get the shot. And it's a whole different procedure.
Was it known early on when you all, those early days of the pandemic that animals could get COVID? Was that something that was discovered later on?
I don't know if it was widely known. I think that from my understanding that all animals have some type of COVID in them, but they did not have the 19 virus. And I think that as things started to heat up around the world, I think over in the Bronx Zoo, they had a tiger that is now here that had COVID-19, and they are recovered and went through it. And so that's what happened.
And I think I read in the Seattle Times, like the spring of 2020 or May, something like that. It was a story on kind of how you all managed the shutdown, that you had to, like some animals had to be with other animals that aren't used to being with other animals. Did I have that right?
No, I've never heard that. We don't mix animals together. Our animals were still here on the property in their enclosures, but they were going in and out like usual. What we found is some of the animals missed the crowd and the guests.
The people, yeah.
Yeah. So when we were starting to open back up, we wanted to make sure they understood that these crowds were coming back. And so we asked some of our employees to come back so that we could start to normalize seeing guests again. As they've only saw their zookeepers for 2 years. And now we're returning and having, crowds of 15,000.
You used your employees to kind of warm the animals back up to
we
being around
always,
people.
make sure our employees get a chance to look at the animals or learn about conservation. But it was a great experience for us to be able to utilize them to make sure that we are normalizing how animals are, coming back into play for the organization.
So moving from how you kind of manage the animals to managing people, what was a leadership trait or quality that you had to lean into or develop in leading your team through all this uncertainty and challenge and change? Was there something that you remember of sort of having to lean in on?
I think really, really, it was emotional intelligence, making sure that as a leader that you had that resiliency in you, but also empathy at the same time. It was like a great balance. If you think about it, people had different anxiety levels going on, and you really had to empathize with your employees who were at home and now in this space that they never had a chance to really put an office in, and they're dealing with their kids and schools. But then you also had your operational employees who were here taking care of the campus and dealing with, guests coming back and the mask and the fear. So there was all different levels of anxiety that you had to think about. And for me, as a leader, one of the biggest things, if people don't know about me already, is self-care. Thinking about yourself during that time. And as a leader, you just really had to make sure that you got into a positive mindset of, we're in this together, we're going to move through this together, and we're going to recover together.
And you were encouraging self-care.
Care of others and themselves, taking that time to, everyone was in a panic. And for these cultural institutions, we have a certain budget. We don't have, all this funding coming in from everywhere. And closing the gate, 21% of my budget comes from admissions. And for me as a CFO, I had to think about what could we do or what could we save to make sure that we got through a period of time to reopen? And how do we redeploy, and how do we open up safely for our guests at the same time?
And you're responsible for the dollars and cents here, but also for a lot of the sort of enterprise activities. And we'll talk about ZooTunes and other things. But one of those that was sort of a huge success that I think it came out of this, but maybe you had it in the works prior, was Wild Lanterns, which was a huge home run this last kind of holiday season into January. Where did that originate? And what were some of the changes this last year, and kind of what was the success story around that?
Sure, that's a great question. So I'm responsible for all business operations and earned revenue, so includes events and all the things that you're seeing. And Wild Lanterns actually takes a year to plan. So we had already been planning wild lanterns for the year that we launched into COVID. But we weren't planning for a pandemic. And a lot of people don't know that those lanterns come all the way from China.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about that, the lanterns had to be shipped over. But as you know, things going on in China, coming in and out, all of the things with airplanes, we had to think about that. And for us, we kind of took a risk. A lot of the other historic holiday events stopped because no one felt comfortable or they didn't want to take the chance to do it. And we just took that risk because we are a 92-acre campus. We're outside. And we felt like if we could do this safely and open up for the community, we could bring some holiday cheer back. And that's kind of how we went forward. We partnered with a company called Tanyu, and they're based out of China, but they also have offices in the United States. And we really work with them closely to come up with a program that would serve the community, but also be safe. But there were a lot of challenges. You know, the import-export business stopped, so our lanterns were sitting out to sea. But again, with some great partnerships down at the Port of Seattle, we were able to get our lanterns off, and I say they saved Christmas for us in 2020 for the entire Pacific Northwest to be able to have wild lanterns.
Yeah, something to go do to mark the season. So many of those traditions that you noted weren't happening in our region and city. And then, I mean, you kind of took it to the next level, it seemed, this last year. I mean, it was just was it a longer run and just it got a lot more attention, I think, and rave reviews for the folks who experienced it.
Yeah, so during COVID, when we first launched it and took that first risk, we were under some mandates of the 25% capacity. This year, the difference that you saw is that we put all the elements back, and it was a full-blown show. We had, different types of lanterns all over, but we put back all the food, all the music, all the entertainment that went along with it. So this year, you saw that full wild lanterns, how it was really supposed to be. And we're continuing to do it next year, but it's always going to be a different show. So that's what's exciting for us. We've just picked our lanterns for this coming year because it does take that long to do. So we're excited about it. It was really a great experience for everyone, and we're excited to bring that back again this holiday season coming up in 2022.
How's the zoo sort of financially positioned for the future? You took out some of the federal loans, and how did you come through this?
That's a great question. I mean, the zoo took the opportunity to go after the PPP loans, but also some of the King County grants that helped us. One of the grants from King County allowed us to hire an outside company to talk to help us with the vaccine verifications, because as all the challenges in the city, staffing was a problem for us. And so the zoo's in a great financial shape with our contributions. We do get money from the city, but our philanthropy is really strong. It was really great to see all the support from all the donors come in and help us during that time. And so we are looking forward to moving forward out of recovery and into a full-blown summer season.
So speaking of that, you recently announced ZooTunes.
Yes.
And a pretty impressive lineup. I got my list. Allison Russell's on. I got to go see Allison. And you had to make a lot of changes last summer, if I recall, just sort of how that worked and where people sat and all that. What can people expect this year? What are the acts that you're kind of most looking forward to?
Well, if everyone knows me, I'm from Philadelphia, and so I am a big Roots fan. So I'm excited that the Roots are coming back because they're only playing here in the Pacific Northwest. So that's one of our, claim to fames. But there's an entirely great lineup of Andrew Bird and Cake and some of these other familiar artists, Psychedelic Furs. And one of the changes that we did from last year is that, again, we were really focused on community, and we partnered with KEXP, and we allowed artists who were not able to play all over to play at the zoo. And so for first time, people who were playing at the Crocodile or smaller venues were able to play here at the zoo. Our venue is 5,000 people. And some of the changes from last year is that we actually had to draw on our meadow 467 boxes for people to be socially distanced. And it was really at a half capacity of 1,800 people. And so we are excited to open back up to a full live concert on the meadow for families and friends to come back to the zoo. And so I think that's what's really exciting for me. We only announced 8 artists, but we have a couple more that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that the zoo is getting. And that's one of the big things for us is DEAI, is making sure that we have a diverse lineup of women, of BIPOC artists. And that's how we're going to continue to go.
So stay tuned for that, huh?
Stay tuned for that, because I think a lot of people are going to really be surprised at some of the new acts that we're trying to bring to the zoo.
And then what's the food and beverage program going to look like this summer?
Well, I think one of the big things that we tried out this past year was having our food and beverage be mobile order. We never had that before. And so the pandemic has shifted us to make us do things more online, digitally, touchless, and things like that. And you're going to see more of that. We have an exciting partner, Levy, who is our subcontractor for our food and beverage program here. So you're going to see lots of things with food trucks, mobile ordering, different beer providers. Again, we really go local here and really give the opportunity for local chefs, local distilleries, local breweries to come into the zoo with our partners, Levy Restaurants, and really procure and cater to the audiences out here.
Well, I'm going to get my calendar full for some of those great acts, because it's kind of the way to mark the summer, I think, is getting over here for at least 1 or 2 concerts for ZooTunes. Such a great vibe and scene, and fun seeing music outside.
Well, I think it's exciting because we have a sponsor, BECU, and it's our 30th year of ZooTunes. And so it's an iconic, long time, generational summer fun thing for people to come to. And so we're excited to really fully launch it back. I think this is going to be an iconic year because we're back on the meadow. It's 5,000 people. There's going to be no
boxes
mask
that you have to draw every day with those. Didn't you have like those yard signs of like sit here, and you had to do that every.
It's
your
a lot
team was
of
doing
work,
that every day, yeah.
And here's the thing: we are such a dynamic campus. So one day it could be ZooTunes, the next day it could be something else on the meadow. So the work that goes into changing it day by day, that was a very hard thing for our employees. And big shout out to them, because the zoo wouldn't be in the best position they've ever been in 123 years without our employees. They are our most valuable assets. And that's how I think of them. And I'm really proud of them.
Yeah, congrats on moving through this and having such a strong balance sheet at the other side of it. It's pretty impressive, given being shut down and all of that. And your attendance, I'm sure, has taken a while to kind of recover as people get more comfortable going out and doing things. There's all this talk and some recent announcements about, companies returning to the office. And, as you noted, you've got, people that need to be on site and they're taking care of animals, but you also have administrative office staff. How are you thinking about the future of work and how you and your team and the zoo will sort of work on as we move out of this?
Yeah, the zoo has always strived to be the zoo of the 21st century. So we were striving for that before the pandemic hit. But what the pandemic made us do is rethink how we work. And so we're looking at a hybrid model. And right now, you're actually here today is one of our big moves. We're doing a pilot with one of our trailers here so that we're going to see how we can work on a hybrid situation. We're setting that up for 2 departments. And we're going to work through that as we bring our employees back in the summertime. And so that's a big thing for us because, again, for 122 years, most of our business has been done on property. But the pandemic forced us to work from home. It forced us to change some of our technology. And we're moving forward in that way because we know that that's the best way for us to work. And technology is key as we move forward. Number one, to attract new employees, but we're in Seattle and this has become a technology hub. Mm-hmm. We can't be a brick and mortar zoo sitting here when we have Google and Facebook and Adobe around the corner. They are our allies to help us move forward as we, continue with our mission in conservation.
So you're embracing, flexibility, hybrid work, and
we are.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
We've recently launched a new segment on our podcast here, Your Perfect Saturday in Seattle. What's your perfect Saturday in Seattle?
Well, first and foremost, I live downtown, as you know, John, and I live right on First Avenue. I call myself the First Avenue girl. A lot of my friends are like, I'm a Second Avenue person. I'm a First Avenue person. But For me, I am a First Avenue girl, and I live right by Pike's Market, and I love waking up in the morning and just going down to that market, especially at 6 in the morning when they're all setting up. And I have my flower people that I go to. I bring my little basket with me, and I start out with the flowers. Then I get my coffee, and then I go over to my, greengrocer, get my meats and things like that. And of course, my day would not be suffice without going to De Laurentiis and getting some of
Love it.
those. I could spend all day in there. So I just go over there and come back home and maybe like cook some lunch, and later on go out for cocktails. And for me, one of my favorite places is Roquette. I'm not sure if you've been there yet.
Not yet, but you've
trying to
touted
get-
it. I know. I got to get up.
I keep trying
north
to
end
get
of
you to
First
go
Avenue.
there.
Get out of my little zone.
And Eric is the owner. He was a bartender at Zigzag.
Yeah.
And so he opened
Great
his
spot.
own place. So he's a small business owner. And that place just reminds me of a really cool spot in Paris that has, cocktails in mind. And it's become home to me. When I'm having a bad day, I go there to get a drink. When I go out for pre-drinks or after dinner. But that would be my go-to spot first. And then El Gaucho, the new El Gaucho. Have you been there?
I haven't been yet. I haven't been.
That is my favorite spot. I'm so glad that I don't have to walk, several streets down, but now walk down on Western and go down there. And the service is impeccable. Number one, you can go there for happy hour, but you can also go there for dinner. You can never go wrong there, and they have something for everybody. And so that's my perfect day. Starting off in the market, there's so many things to do. I think there's, a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of great restaurants in there. There's a lot of shopping that you can do. It's a one-stop shop for me. I mean, if you're living downtown, that should be your grocery store, honestly.
You've given a good plug and commercial for all the benefits of living downtown, and particularly living close to First Avenue, which I think is downtown's best street. There's just so many great spots. The market anchors it, of course, but
Definitely.
lots of other things going on.
I think that you can also, go a couple streets back, going to the Spears, but also South Lake Union. There's so many things and that's what I think about when I talk to my friends. It's like there's First Avenue, but then there's South Lake Union. There's over in the Olive area where you're living. There's so much stuff to do in the neighborhood, and there's so many exciting things that are opening up. I'm excited about the new PCC.
Terrific. It's terrific.
Right?
Yeah.
We've never had a grocery store downtown, and to be able to walk and get your groceries at a great place like PCC is exciting for everyone downtown. And I think, that is really going to be a big draw for new people coming in to a city, so you don't have to go to Queen Anne to get groceries and things like that, but just having that there. So it's exciting to see the city open back up.
Absolutely. One of the other segments I usually close with, but I want to give this one to you because you are, I'm going to reveal you as one of my sources for cool new things happening in downtown because you have your finger on the pulse of the new places. And so I usually close with, the can't miss, don't miss sort of experience or new business, new restaurant that people just shouldn't miss in downtown Seattle. Do you got one that you want to share with us?
Well, I've already shared Roquette because it's not new, but it's been there. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about some of our places that, closed down when they were there. I don't know of anything new right now. Have you seen anything new that pops up? Because you and I usually talk about new things that are popping up, like the Stretch or
Where's the new? Yeah.
Oh, I have one new place. Yes, I do. And it's not a bar. It's on Western. It's called Sanctuary. It's a yoga studio.
Okay.
And it's an immersive experience to go in.
See, I didn't know this.
Yes.
This is good.
I wanted to actually tell you that we should go together and try it out.
I'm down.
We should go. It's a yoga experience.
Immersive yoga.
On Western. It's called Sanctuary. And basically you come in and you actually are on a screen and you can pick, if you want to do a vinyasa class or depending on the class that you want to do, it has Welcome Michele, hot towels. You're in the studio by yourself, and it's an instructor led by video on a screen, and it's just a really calming atmosphere. And you're in the moment,
Brilliant.
and you feel like you're surrounded by nature and different things. but it's a great, extraordinary experience.
See, I knew you'd have something.
I had to think about that for a while. I was like, what is my new thing? And I was like, oh, Sanctuary, the new yoga studio on Western.
Very good. Well, a good plug for Sanctuary. I'm down to try it out. And I want to thank you for coming on our podcast, Michele. And it's great to spend time with you. And thanks for all you're doing in your leadership of the 123-year-old, I have that right? Institution of the zoo. There's not a lot of things in Seattle that are 123 years old and still operating and functioning at such a high level. So congrats to you on that.
Well, thank you. And we just want to thank everybody that supported us during the time when we were closed. And we're excited to offer a myriad of events for the summertime. And so thanks for having me on to let us talk a little bit more about the zoo.
Right on. Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Michele Smith, a great friend of mine and great individual and leader over there at the zoo, and someone who also gives her time to local nonprofits in the area, serves on the board of Mary's Place, something we didn't talk to, but Michelle's been very civically involved as well, and always a great source and resource of information. She's got her finger on the pulse of what's happening downtown. As I noted, she's always given me insights on what's new and what's open and what I've missed. And I have gotten to Roquette, the great cocktail bar that Michele mentions, that's over on First Avenue in Belltown. Got there last week, and it lives up to the billing. I got to say, great little spot, and was on Esquire's 2021 Best Bars in America list. It lives up to all the hype, both from Michele and Esquire and others. So I was glad to get over there. And then I got to Umi next door afterwards, which is just terrific sushi in Belltown. So that's a good night in Belltown. If you're looking for a fun night in Belltown, go to Roquette and then Umi. And then I hit the Showbox afterwards for a great show. Saw Valerie June over there. That was phenomenal. And I've not been to Sanctuary yet, the immersive yoga studio that Michele mentioned, but that's on my list. I'll get down there sooner rather than later. And I did say that I was handing over the must-see, must-do segment that I usually have to her, but I will make note of the opening of the George at the Fairmont Hotel, which was formerly known as the Georgian Room. It reopened on April 4th for dinner, Thursday through Saturday. It's been completely redone, the menu and the space. I got to peek in there several months ago before they were totally done with the place, but they were far enough along where it was clear that this is going to be a super cool place for dinner. I think they're going to be doing lunch at some point, but just dinner right now. Check that out. The Fairmont spent about $50 million renovating the hotel over the last several years. I've made note of the lobby renovation, the new bar, and the speakeasy, and this is their restaurant that reopened, and the Fairmont will celebrate its 100th birthday in another 2 years or so. So just great history there in that fabulous hotel in downtown Seattle. Go check out the George. I want to make note of the Mariners home opener this Friday, sold out. It's just going to be so great to have 45,000 plus fans spilling into downtown Seattle and Pioneer Square and Soto and Phil and T-Mobile. I will be there. Hope you will too. We all have a lot of optimism for our Seattle Mariners this year for good reason. Go M's. Great to have baseball back. Great to have a full house at T-Mobile. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.